Okay, gonna go ahead and get this synced up here. Hey folks, it's been a while since I made a full-on video. I figured I would try something different this time. I'm gonna do a little bit of talking and chatting and drawing at the same time. I'm currently trying to sync up the sound between this footage and the footage that I'm recording here, so you should be seeing whatever I'm drawing on the screen. I'm currently drawing a character from an upcoming former novel and webcomic project, and that's kind of what I wanted to get into right now. And I think I totally messed up that recording, but that's totally okay. I'm just going to go back into it. That's why this is casual and not professional. But in any case, I'm going to go ahead and get this started here. Basically, it's been a while. I've been busy doing a lot of webcomic projects. I've been writing my stories, doing a lot of editing, and I'm currently doing a lot of, I'm doing a pretty big collaboration project right now, but this is more of my original work. And I wanted to announce that I'm actually pretty much no longer going to be writing in a more typical novel format. I'm currently in the process of editing my second novel, which is close to completion. I just need to do some editing and mainly just work on the illustrations. But I decided that I'm not going to go into making the third and the fourth novel in a typical novel format. I've decided that I'm actually going to go back and turning this into a webcomic series, which I technically started off with back in 2021, 2022, right around that time frame. I technically kind of like started this whole publication process back in 2020. And I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with my saga at the time. I wasn't sure if I wanted to make it into a novel series, a comic series, or maybe do like a series of zines. And at the time, I started the webcomic it was in a way kind of based off of the very first part of my published novel, The Era of Antiquity, like book one, part one. It's kind of like compartmentalized into different parts. And I took that initial draft, and I basically created a webcomic out of it, which is why the original duology webcomic was kind of cut down, because at the time the serialization wasn't completely finished yet. But I slowly grew to like love writing as a medium in and of itself. For those of you who have been following me for a while, you know that TL Saga was inspired primarily by the writing style that you would see in stuff like Beowulf or the Iliad and the Odyssey. That very kind of old-timey, almost Silmarillion type of style. But over the last, it's been almost a year since I've really been planning out Volume 3 and 4, which I've technically been planning out for, 16 years since I started working on the saga back in 2009. Essentially, I decided that it'd probably be better to switch to a webcomic format because I'm not the biggest fan of writing a contemporary style. My saga, the novels, the first two, Volume 1, which is out, and Volume 2, which is on the way, because they're written in that kind of like almost pseudo-archaic style, I felt like it was easier to write. It's easier for me to write in that format because those types of narratives tend to be very descriptive, whereas contemporary novels, which the next two stories take place more in kind of like a technological modern age, I felt like writing in a more contemporary style was not really befitting for me. I just straight up didn't like it. I didn't like the way it was turning out. I kept having to rewrite and rewrite and rewrite, and it got to a point where I was just kind of like sick of it. So I've decided to transition into more of a webcomic format. That's going to take a little bit of a while to set up, but my saga will always be a storytelling format, first and foremost, more than anything. And really what it comes down to is that I think that in a way, like, that actually fits more with me, because originally, when I originally wanted to become an artist, I was inspired by film. I'm not a filmmaker, but I do love the medium. I find it to be very interesting. And there's kind of like a little bit of a crossover when you're working on novels, or when you're working on graphic novels, and when you're working on film, because both require scripting, both require storyboarding, whereas when you're writing a traditional novel, you're literally just writing. And I love to write. I love to write stories, I like to write characters, I like to write dialogue sequences, But as far as filling in all the blanks, that just wasn't working out for me. And what it ultimately came down to is that I don't like to pursue things I straight up don't like doing. And I don't like writing more modern, contemporary style fiction. It's just not for me. So instead of forcing myself to do something I didn't feel like doing, I decided that I'm going to cancel the novel end of things, but instead of canceling it altogether, I'm actually going to reformat this into a webcomic, and not even really a webcomic, but really just a full-on, just straight-up novel series altogether. Like a full-on graphic novel series that you would actually traditionally publish, not like on Webtoon, because I've had to deal with a lot of stuff with Webtoon. I just don't like the platform in general. But I felt like that was a good way to avoid getting into art block, because I can't speak for everybody else, but one of the reasons that I've run into art block in the past, and this was a long time ago, is that one of the biggest inducers of art block is when you force yourself to do something you straight up don't like doing, or, you know, feeling like there's this sense of obligation. And I guess when you turn art into a business, that's just ultimately inevitable. But one of the reasons I've been able to avoid getting art block for like a decade, but really over the last, I don't know, I would say 5 or 6 years, is that I was constantly cycling through doing different projects. If I wasn't working on the graphic novel or the webcomic, I would go to working on the novel. If I wasn't working on the novel, I would be working on the book illustrations. If I wasn't working on book illustrations, I would be working on like creating and designing chibi stickers. And if I wasn't doing that, I would be going to commission work. So cycling all of these different things felt like that felt like it was constantly keeping my brain active. And as I said earlier, I kind of really haven't had major art block in a very, very long time, because I think the longest time I've ever gone into art block was maybe about a month or so, maybe a couple months. But to me, art block isn't not drawing. It's maybe doing a doodle here and there, but never finishing anything. And that could be, that varies depending on person to person. For some, art block is when you're just simply able to not draw, like, at all, which is not something I ever want to experience. But I figured the best way to avoid burnout was simply to be realistic with myself and say, you know what, I don't like doing this. I don't like the process this is going, but I still want to tell this story. So instead of canceling it altogether, I'm just going to change formats. So that's what I've kind of been doing in general, just kind of a casual conversation on what I've been up to and what I'm planning on doing. So from this day forward, just to make things clear, Volumes 1 and 2 will be novels. Volume 2 is on the way. I'm close to finishing that. But the planned quote-unquote Volume 3 and Volume 4, which will be kind of like the last major story, those will be done in a comic format, so I just want to make that clear. But yeah, I've actually probably spent more time drawing than talking. I'm not used to doing these two things at the same time, so bear with me as I kind of get my footing with this format. But here's the character that I'm drawing right here. He's kind of like a gruff, like drill instructor, colonel type character. He's got the big ol' bolt rifle here. Can I say that on YouTube? I don't know. But yeah, that's kind of what I've been working on. I've been working on a lot of character sheets, actually. I think, hold on. I think I have, like, that's my roadmap. I think I have, like, over, like, 60 different character sheets planned out. A lot of these have been crossed out, actually, because a lot of them are available on my Patreon. But I still have tons and tons of more character sheets to work on. And I actually think that this is incredibly helpful for creating comics, because it kind of creates like a style guide. But yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I'm going to get back to drawing because, like I said, I'm not used to drawing and talking and noticing the camera at the same time. I'll get used to it. But I'm going to get back to actually drawing this time, so I will go ahead and see you guys later.